Dave here. You're very welcome to the podcast, Talking Sport with Stan. Great to have you on, Dave.
It's been too long, my friend. It's been too long.
Absolutely. I really appreciate you taking time out now because I know you are manic at the minute. You have so much going on, and you're doing from webinars, I'm sure, to online classes and whatnot. How is that all going for you?
Good, yeah. Do you know, I'm actually a massive fan of webinars now. Massive. I mean, we did one there for strength and conditioning for fitness methods or whatever, and there's people from Portugal tuning in. So,
Oh, fantastic.
brave new world, you know?
Yeah, it's the way forward, I think, isn't it?
It definitely is. Like, I mean, it's just amazing how you can just get the information across, record it, you can get access to it later on. It's just mighty, you know?
And still lots to explore, I'm sure.
Yeah,
Lots
big
of tools
time.
out there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, look, I'm really grateful to have you on. As I said before, I set up this podcast to, promote our Longfordians, our great Longford people and sports people, and get their story out there. But every now and again, I like to get in a special guest just to change things up. And the reason I have you on is because of your massive contribution to our culture GA in Longford at the time you came in, and you changed the game for a lot of us as athletes because we had no clue of strength and conditioning whatsoever. Like when we think back, some of the stuff we were doing, and even some of the stuff we were taking on ourselves during your time, questionable too.
Yeah,
But, no, it was a significant turning point, even for GA in Longford. And just looking forward to hearing how that came about, because even with the time you were with us, like we never sat down and talked about these things. Oh yeah, how did Dave here end up here? How did that pathway form? So look, it's great, and I'm really looking forward to hearing from you, Dave. So we might just start about your journey in strength and conditioning. Like, where did this all start for you? Where this interest came from?
Well, I'll be quick with this because no one wants to really hear about my journey in S&C. But I was one of these lads who was no good at sport, but was ridiculously obsessed with it for my levels of ability, which is a common thread in any S&C coach, really, And I basically trying to get my game on the school's rugby team for 6 years. And I kept trying, and eventually I did it. I was the starting tie head prop for the school's team. And I just didn't give in. And then but on that journey, I was plowing weights, doing everything wrong, of course, plowing weights. And I was handed the number 3 jersey. In rugby schools. There's a little bit of an old, ceremony or whatever to give you your jersey. And it was about maybe 2 weeks before the cup game.
Cool.
And we're playing a team from Connacht, big boys from Galway, in a rugby game. And I went into a ruck and I tore my ACL. And didn't really know it at the time, and tried to play on. I actually did play on the game with a torn cruciate, so there you go. Not ideal. I was limping around. I didn't get subbed. I don't think there was any subs.
I was playing with it. Who's looking out for you?
Yeah. There was no physios, nothing, And I'm not that old, but there was no physios, nothing. There was nothing like that back then. And so that was my ACL, and I was devastated. But I met some of the most intelligent people I've still ever met on the journey on my rehab, and they were doing S&C and all that sort of stuff with me back then when no one was doing it, and I just became obsessed with it. And then filling out the CAO form, picked sports science, and then kind of the rest is history, really. And I just kind of was obsessed, really. I mean, I remember my old mentor, he used to be very protective of his information. He always didn't want to give it to you for free. He wanted you to kind of sweat a little bit. And I remember going to his house to collect something one day, and he had this vast library in his front room, and he left for a minute to get something. And I pulled out my old Nokia phone and went around the library and just took a picture of every single book that was relevant to strength and conditioning on a shelf. And then went on Amazon that night and bought them all.
Great idea. Great thinking. And you and the Nokia as well. That would have took a bit of time to...
That would have took a bit of time, all right.
Get into operation.
I was like a spy, and it was mental when I think back. And that served me well, that sort of level of... and all strength coaches are like that. And then I went to the States and worked in a couple of places for a few weeks and paid. I wasn't even accepted as an intern, so I had to actually pay to learn off people in the States. And
that experience, unbelievable.
Yeah, and then before I went to Longford, I was 3 years with Ballymun Kickums, you see.
Okay.
So we didn't know it at the time, but that Ballymun Kickums team was serious. I mean, to name some of the players that were 18, 19 in that team is like a who's who of GAA now.
Yeah.
And then you had, like, Paddy Christie growing up was a bit of a hero of mine because he's a fullback for the Dubs.
Yeah.
He was on that team. Ian Robertson, Philly McMahon was on that team. And you even had Dean Rock and Young McCarthy were 16-year-olds. But even the club players they had, like Alan Hubbard, who had a run with the Dubs, was a sensational club player. And I kind of got them doing S&C when no one was doing it in Dublin at that level.
Yeah.
Very, very small amounts. And they got great success from it as well. So I kind of went from Ballymun Kickums to Longford, as you do.
Yeah, and how did that come about? Like, how did that whole journey? What was the call? Who called you first? Or
I still don't really know, if I'm being honest. I've actually never spoke to Glenn Ryan about this, would you believe? So I think Glenn was there 2 years, and I think there you know better than me, but I think the
I
players
missed his first year. I think I came in. Well, my first proper year back again was, I think, when you came on board, in that second year, I think. Or no, maybe it was the third. It was the third.
Yeah, third year. I came involved in the third year.
Yeah.
So it was interesting. I think there was some sort of thing. The year before I arrived, actually, he's at Bet Mayo in Pearse Park. So that kept everything. That kept the whole thing going, you know.
Yeah.
If you look at that Mayo team, like,
I know. It was a great stepping stone. It really was.
Yeah, and it just proved that there was something there, you know. And so I think he wanted an S&C coach or whatever, and I think he rang about 5 or 6 or 7 people, and I think I was his 8th or 9th person he rang. Now I think, and I don't know, I think Cian O'Neill might have said this guy is enthusiastic and he'd do that and that, and the other. And I think the work I'd done with Ballymun didn't do me any harm either, you know. And they were becoming a real proper team at that stage, so they were nearly like a county team in of itself. So and that's it. So Glenn Ryan rang me, and I'd always really wanted to coach a county team.
Yeah. A great place to start.
Yeah. So that was it basically. So Glenn Ryan just rang me one day, and I don't even think I met him in Dublin. I met him in the little bar there in
Slashers.
In Slashers, yeah.
Yeah, I remember the first night well, yeah.
Oh, that was the first night, but I met him to see if we'd be friends. And what people don't realise is I went down and said, well, where's your gym? He says, you don't have a gym. I says, well, we need a gym. And he says, well, what about this? And we went around looking at different places. We might have even went to different pitches and everything. And I think Pat Cahill said, no, you're using Slashers and that's it. And you know the usual, it's a club that you're renting, so you have to be careful. Yeah. So we found 2 squash courts anyway, the famous squash courts.
That's right.
And I had a lad up north who supplied us with a load of kind of rough and ready dumbbells and stuff.
Was that Gregory at the time? It was?
No, it wasn't.
No.
It was a gentleman called Dermot Little.
Okay.
Who, if anyone's in the gym industry, will get a chuckle, and they know who Dermot is.
Okay.
And we just threw a load of dumbbells and stuff, and away we went. But Glenn was, really, really wanted it looking well and stuff. He wanted it to have that the first day of the pre-season, the players walked in and went, right, okay, there's a new sheriff in town,
Yeah.
So that's kind of the journey to Longford, as I remember.
That was so evident even from the first meeting, because when you come in, I'm sure it was daunting too, because you're coming into there's a gang of us in the room. We haven't really been exposed to something like this before. Some lads are around a while, they'd be stubborn enough to change, mightn't like it. Then you have the other half of us that are like really optimistic, excited about this. So was that a daunting experience for you, or what was your thoughts sitting in front of us as a group?
Was it daunting? It's daunting. Yeah, it is. It's always daunting in a team, because I always tell, when you walk in front of a team, everyone has their, what I call, the bluffer radar on. And if they think you're a bluffer, and they might think you're a bluffer straight away, players they've heard it all. Even when you hadn't heard it all, you've heard it all, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
So you walk in and it's like, you could just tell the characters who would be a bit of resistance, or the characters that might have done strength conditioning in college that might be a bit of resistance. But you just start, and you just make it as professional as you possibly can. And over time, you hope to win the battles of hearts and minds, you know?
Yeah.
And by the way, it wasn't just winning the battles of hearts and minds with the players. It was winning the battles of hearts and minds with the coaches.
Yeah.
Because when you're a strength and conditioning coach, you're fighting two battles. You have to be friendly and get on well with the coaches, the real coaches, as I call them. And you have to have the players like you to get any results out of them. So it's actually very tricky. So you become, good at being maybe a good people person, and you try and really ring people and get one-to-one connections with people.
Yeah, mediator.
Yeah, just to try and stay in the gig, really, and I don't mean that in a sort of sly way. That's just the nature of the beast,
Of course. And then like your managers want players on the pitch. Your job is to get players in the best condition they can possibly be in. If a lad is injured, you have to be very careful with that player to getting them onto the pitch, because you don't want to relapse. So you can see kind of where impatience can build as well. So communication, I'm sure, is key.
Well, yeah, and you can imagine Glenn being where Glenn had come from as a player.
Oh yeah.
And me going to him after about a week of just training, just going, I need 12 weeks with these lads to get them in any shape.
Mm.
And I don't want them to even look at a football too much.
Yeah.
And I don't want them doing running. I want them locked in the gym. I mean, they're weeds, for want of a better, more, fun term. And then I was doing a bit of basic screening, and it was like, you rock up to me and you're like, yeah, my quad doesn't really work.
Yeah. Shock horror stuff.
And I haven't played in 2 years properly. And I was like, okay. And then Paul Barden would come up and he'd say, my back's hanging off me. I can't do this. And Frankie McGee, I think, was in crutches then. I think he had just ruptured his Achilles.
The Achilles, yeah. Desperate injury.
So there was all that to sort. And unfortunately, sometimes to really sort broken bodies, it's like bringing the car to the panel beater. You need to, keep it off the road for a little bit,
Yeah, I love the way you viewed that, actually, that we need to get these boys into the house first and sort them out before we let them out, because you could have went the other way and started the normal training regime, and sure, we just would have broke down. Like, we had so many issues, so many of us.
Yeah, it was an injured team, and when I came in, I seen a team that you could nearly smell. You had a big win the year before, but it kind of fizzled out. And morale was low because I think you were only better than Kilkenny and London.
Yeah.
It's like, so the only way is up.
Exactly.
And I love them sort of challenges, actually. I really get a kick out of that. I've actually never been involved with a county team that has been King of the Castle. Which I actually would like to do now, to see what it's like on that side of the fence. But I absolutely love that challenge of trying to get a team a little bit better,
Yeah, and watching them progress. And well, I'll tell you definitely brought some energy that time. I remember, like the transformation of slashers alone, it just became a fortress for us, that little gym in there. Just the work we put in together and all the new basics we were learning, and we built a bond in that spot. We did.
Yeah, and one thing I did and people might think, oh God, he's a bit of crack, Dave, and he's a bit of fun, and he's all this sort of thing. I actively make sure I'm like that with teams. When you're like, why would I? My dad would always say to me, like, say, if someone's on the knees, why kick them when they're already down? So I would be like, no, these are brilliant players. You just need to do this, and this is what other teams are doing, and build you up rather than break you down, and have fun. Because maybe going off topic a little bit, in Longford, all these every county, the club thing is a very strong thing.
Yeah.
Because when you're not winning with the county team, it's very hard to build a bond, but then you go back to your club team and you actually start winning. So that's the kind of addiction. You can win a bit of silverware with the club, and you have to, and it's not in a sort of sinister way. It's just human nature. So how do you get lads mixing and having the crack? And you can do that, but still get the work done. And that's something I really tried to do in 3 years in Longford, and still try to do. And I make no bones about it. Like, I mean, you've been coached by me. I don't take messing, or I don't take anyone, being rude to me or anything like that. But at the same token, we would have some days where we just have a bit of fun, or I think that's important because life is too short.
Oh, for sure. And like that's one thing that always stands out for me with that setup was, we worked hard, but we did have fun as well. And you were always so positive and always instilled that belief in us. And players without realizing it, we need that. Like you need everything. You need every margin you can get. And it was just such a great setup to be a part of. It was so positive. It was so refreshing. Everybody was rowing the one direction, and as you touched on there, and it's come up in a chat before, actually, creating the unity in a county dressing room is a very difficult thing to achieve, but if you do in some way, shape or form, it's huge.
And what's the old expression, trust or a bond, or whatever way you want to say it, comes in crawling into a room but leaves in a Formula One car. Like it's so true. And just to build bit by bit by bit. One of the things I would have always tried to do and still try and do is on the way home ring players, or on the way to train and ring players. And even recently with a team that should remain nameless, I rang a player, one of the star players in the team, and I said, how are you, you need to work on this, blah, blah, blah. And he says, can I just give you a bit of feedback? And I said, yeah. I thought I was going to get a bit of abuse off him. And he said, you're the first coach to ring me one-on-one about what I needed to do to get better. And I was like, wow, it's still happening. I mean, it's...
Yeah.
I mean,
fair play to you. It's so important.
Yeah, but like, but that would be a conscious decision. And what we were lucky with in Longford, and I was thinking before you asked me to do this, I was thinking why it worked. Just good blokes. There were just good lads. Like, you as I always joke, you wouldn't mind them going out with your sister, that type of good blokes. But it's something that's overlooked. I mean, if you're a good bloke, you'll just do the work and get on with it and have a bit of crack about it and get stuck in. I mean, it's just the characters that we had there, like, and we'd probably one of the greatest leaders in GAA history, in Paul Barden, who just did absolutely everything like every other player. It was like he was the first year on the panel,
Yeah, pre-season, you name it.
Yeah.
I know, so important. And like when you talk about, you making that call and being, even just to having that thought in your head to call a player, that probably stems a little back without realizing it. It stems back to maybe when you went through the whole injury process that time. You experienced probably what it was like not to be checked on.
That's actually, I never even thought of that, but I had, just putting a jumper on here if the audio goes funny.
You're all right.
I had, I don't know how many years playing, and the coach's son was ahead of me. And like,
I know,
you can imagine.
Yeah.
And I was so stubborn, I didn't get the message to go away, so I kept at it and kept at it and kept at it. So yeah, back then though, that was just a foreign concept. There was no coaching courses to say you should actually keep developing players who were on the periphery.
Yeah.
But I never thought of that. So there you go. I learned something from the call here. That's probably is one of the reasons why.
Yeah, it's a life experience too. A lot of these things can't be, they can't be taught until you go through them. Cool.
But never underestimate as well. Like, you're on a county team, and let's say you're genetically gifted, say. But strength coaches obviously love that. But obviously, strength coaches love lads just doing the work.
Yeah.
Like the guy that loses the 3 kilos that needed 6. That, like, it's just, and it feeds into the room. It feeds into the room. That energy and that hardship and that work goes into the person left and right of anyone who's working hard, and that's what we had, certainly.
Yeah, fed off each other.
Yeah.
Do you think with all the online stuff going on and online training, sending out programs, which I'm sure you are, do you think that will come into play going forward now? Do you think there will be a lot more individual training programs? Fellas will be maybe doing a lot of running stuff on their own, and then you'll be kind of relying on testing then more so.
I think so. And another thing I was thinking about, Sean, about our first 2 years versus our third year.
Yeah.
People don't realize is we only trained 3 times a week for the first 2 years.
Yeah.
Kept everything fresh as a daisy.
Yeah.
And like I certainly nearly look forward to driving down and doing training session, because it was like, it was your hobby. Like, it was 3 nights a week, and it was just great. And then we moved to 4 nights a week, and probably didn't get near the same intensity we used to get doing 3 nights a week. Like, we used to peel is 3 nights a week. But it made sense because you had so much recovery time. And I'd give you a running program, and the good lads would do it. And I definitely think that's the way forward. I just know from my own experience as a coach, if I see a player 3 nights a week, it's just nearly perfect, And then, and there's so much stuff that players can do on their own if they've any head. And with them all in development squads now, kind of knowing what mass runs are and tempo runs are, they don't need their hand held. And if they do, they're not going to make it anyway. So trust them, give them a piece of paper and test them, and start breeding players in counties that are self-sufficient, Roy Keane type, or whatever way you want to say.
Yeah.
And you'd be laughing, especially with the distances involved coaching someone like Longford,
Of course, because like that's what gets them onto these setups at the end of the day, is the personal drive and the want to be there. So
yeah,
like as you say, if you leave them to their own devices, you'll find out sooner or later whether they're going to put in the work or not.
Yeah, and I actually, and I do this, but like nowadays now everyone's doing monitoring and everything's getting done, and I kind of feel sorry for the players. Even when they're at home, they're kind of connected to the county team.
Yeah.
Leave the poor gits alone. Do your I only personally, I like monitoring, but and it probably, to be honest with you, it needs to be done. But there is definitely something to, especially with a county like Longford, to keeping it fresh for as long as possible. And it was interesting, Sean. You might say I trained just very hard or whatnot, but we only did 3 times a week.
Yeah.
So
I would never say that. I loved every bit of it, like
yeah.
Well, at times. Sure, who loves running all the time too?
Yeah,
but,
well, yeah.
Yeah, of course. But when I look back on it, it was just positive experience. Every blade of grass we covered was worth it in the end,
Yeah. No, it was a great time, and it was. I miss it a lot. That's the truth of it. That sort of bond we had for those 3 years was ferocious. And
a lifelong bond.
Yeah. You just bump into a lad on the street, and you just go. You just start talking as if you're back in the.
Yeah, as if it was yesterday. Yeah. So, in your time with us, Dave, what would you say was your most memorable moment?
I'm going to shock you and say I think my most memorable moment. Well, obviously, the 2 trophies were huge, and then beating Laois after letting them beat us the first time around was huge, and there's no getting away from it. But two other highlights that maybe you don't even think of as much is, do you remember we bet Cavan in Cavan?
Oh, I do, yeah.
And I was like, right, okay, we actually gave him a bit of a lesson in football that day. And I remember Brian Kavanagh scored a goal on the volley.
That's right, yeah.
It was samba stuff we played. It was just, we exploded onto them. And I just remember John Fay bursting in the dressing room. And all the lads around the Cavan area, the Mullinachta boys, were absolutely 100 and something years their neighbours had won up on them. And it was just one day in a real championship match where we not even bet them, we bet them up a stick. That was, and then did we go to Bernard McElganny's place after that as well for a few scoops?
Oh, we probably did touch base there, yeah.
And just in the middle of nowhere for a dub, a few scoops there, and it was just a really good moment. But one of my most memorable moments would be the time we bet Limerick in the third year.
Oh yes, in Pearse Park.
Yeah, and because
we were in a tough spot.
We were in a tough spot, and training was just flat, and I was like, and then I think Glenn Ryan just did something brilliant. We didn't even do a warm up that day. Do you remember?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, vaguely. Yeah.
And they had bet us the year before, so they were and bet us fairly handily actually. Not handily.
In extra time. Yeah, that was a very tough loss.
Yeah, we threw that one away a little bit, but that's life.
Yeah.
But and we got a big win. I think we won by 12 or 13 points.
Mm.
And for the caliber of you as blokes to get that win, and not only to win, but to win in style, on the bloody hottest day I ever remember coaching a team, that was actually huge, I think. And it just was like a pressure valve released. But listen, I remember we were driving to Croke Park and we had the Blues and Twos in front of us, and we're booting in from Lucan somewhere. And I was saying, blimey, this is exactly why I coached. And just to see all the young lads wearing Longford jerseys walking into Croke Park.
Fantastic.
It was just mighty, you know. It was just mighty. It was just like, and I'll be honest with you, didn't appreciate it enough at the time.
No, likewise, yeah.
And then we went, did we go? It was like we had a yearly few beers in O'Donoghue's then as well.
Yeah.
And
we made the most of it, you know.
Yeah. But O'Donoghue's is my favourite pub in Dublin anyway.
Mm.
And then Paul Barden goes, sure, me, does his uncle own that? Or you?
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
Yeah, this is... And we were upstairs in a room I didn't know existed in O'Donoghue's at the top. And I think he was filling it with Hennessy, the trophy with Hennessy. And we were going around drinking this metallic-y Hennessy. It was just mighty crack, you know?
Great times, yeah. Yeah, that's what it's all about. Brilliant. A few little pictures for you here, just to re-jog the memory. The famous Henry Muller.
Henry Muller, yeah.
Yeah, he came up in conversation with Davy Barden there not too long ago. Actually, I couldn't believe Davy didn't remember it at first, but it wasn't. His memory wasn't long coming back to him. Oh, hilarious times! Yeah, some running done then too. And it's funny when you talk about the games there in Croke Park. And the reason I have the medicine ball here is because our warm-ups at the time were so different. You know, we were coming out onto the pitch, we were bringing the medicine balls out. And, you know, from the outside looking in, people could say, oh, what are these lads at? You know, like, this is ridiculous, and all this, blah, blah, blah. But I remember how important that was for us. Like, that routine for getting us going. It added fire to us. It got us up before the games. Like, we were humming at the end of those warm-ups. And then I think it was after the first round of the championship game against Wexford, the one we drew. And I remember on RT, I think all Pat Spillane could do was give out about this approach to the warm-up. If you can recall this.
I do, yeah.
Yeah. I just thought it was so petty. Like, you know, here we were as a county, you know, one of the so-called weaker counties, bringing in approaches, bringing in something that could make a difference to our play and to our confidence. Like, it was so needless to be knocking something like that when he should have been encouraging the fact that we're trying something different to get up the levels.
Yeah, well, and Joe Brolly was like, he was actually fascinated by it, but sneering it, and then he said,
"Yeah,
and they're unbeaten this year."
Yeah,
yeah. Listen, it just shows you, and it is a bedbug of mine coaching sort of inverted commas the weaker counties. You are to those lads, you're a bit of a threat, a bit of a nuisance, you know. At sometimes. Now I'm sure they don't mean that. And they're cute enough, those boys too. They get their they need to talk about something.
Be controversial, some sort.
A bit of an L something. But the med ball thing was interesting. I remember before we went to Croke Park, And I said to Glenn Ryan, "Oh, sure, we'll leave the med balls at home." And Glenn Ryan looked at me and says, "You absolutely will not." He said, "You'll do whatever we've been doing up until now to get us the success we've been getting." And I said, "Sorry, gaffer." And I leaned into Paul Barden and I said, "Paul, what do you think about the med balls?" And Paul just said something to the effect of, "Sure, I think they're mighty, you know." And you remember holding the O'Neill's football after throwing them
Oh
around?
yeah, yeah.
It would feel like a feather, wouldn't it?
You peg it into the stand.
Yeah, and I mean, and I remember during that whole time, someone recorded our warm up and put up on YouTube, and they said, "Ooh, Longford doing a very interesting, pre-activation power exercise and blah blah blah." And I was thinking, right, so I'm getting praised and ridiculed in one stage, but the only reason people were getting ridiculing it was because no one was really doing it. It was ahead of its time, and I did it with Offaly years later, and I would still do it. And I've yet to meet players when you introduce it slowly into training that complain about it. Quite the opposite; they absolutely love it. You know,
Yeah,
so
I have to agree. Yeah, and then I have the chips in. I think when you think back in knowledge and awareness, I'm thinking of the Portugal training camp. And I remember us being in the canteen and we were all eating the feed, and some of us threw a little portion of chips at the side of the plate. And I just remember you patrolling around the kitchen saying, "No chips, lads, no chips," like this, you know. So the following day, you just see this plates coming down with mountains of rice on it. But the reason there were mountains of rice is because there was chips buried underneath it.
it wasn't the only thing that happened on that trip that I didn't know about.
No,
We could
that's
do
the
a
most.
whole podcast on that trip.
Oh, quit for down the line.
Yeah, listen.
Great times again.
Well, I'll have even say the funnier one. Do you remember we went to London to play London and flew over and back on the same day? Were you?
Yes, I do. Yeah.
That was. And do you remember the pitch we played on?
I was desperate.
And it was get out of Dodge, and we flew over and back on the same day, which was a big no. But what even broke my heart more was we had done a lot of work on nutrition witches, you know, because you just hadn't a clue on that whole area.
No, not actually.
And we just went up to, you know, that manky breakfast places that are in and I look at Gilly and he's loading it up with rashers and sausages and fry-ups, and I was like, oh my God, I actually got grumpy for about 4 hours.
And Gilly wouldn't show a bit of it.
No, Gilly was looking, he'd pull up his top and he'd have the biggest six-pack you've ever seen probably. But yeah, no, it was that's the chips thing. I don't know why I was so mad about chips. I mean, you were doing so much training, it didn't really matter. That was wrong of me, actually, looking back.
That was funny though. It was funny.
It was definitely funny, you know.
Like,
because
I used to make me laugh. You could just see the chips sticking out through the rice, like lads trying to bury it under the rice. Thought that was brilliant altogether.
Yeah, like you're training twice a day, and me giving out to you about eating chips.
Swelter and heat too. Yeah.
Yeah.
They're great. They're great times.
Yeah.
And Dave, congratulations on the new book.
Yeah, well, it's not that new. It's out a while now. But
yeah, but I mean, the whole, you know, it's a massive thing, I'm sure.
Yeah, well, it came about because I was between getting the job I'm in now and leaving the Offaly football senior team. I had a bit of time, and I just kind of wrote this up together, some of the ideas I had, and I wanted to make it as simple as possible for coaches on the ground to understand, which isn't always something that's possible.
Yeah.
And one of the things I also did was I wrote it with a gentleman called Hare Leach. And Hare Leach was my weightlifting coach when I used to do weightlifting.
Okay.
And he's a freelance journalist. So he was like, it was like a English exam, really. I'd go in, do a chapter, and he'd say, this is brutal, this is good. And because he's a weightlifting coach, he knows what plyometrics are, he knows what squats are.
Brilliant.
He's knowledgeable and all that. And it was really enjoyable thing. And it actually, you know, got great feedback. And it is, I'll stand over it, is very good. And from a Longford point of view, there's a good few pictures in there and little stories and anecdotes about training and stuff. And it's I'm trying to get more copies printed, to be honest, because but you can get it on Amazon for like €10, and it'll go straight into your phone. I think I make 50 cents on every book that gets sold on Amazon, but there you go. But I just didn't want to send it out for free because you know yourself, if it's
Oh, of
free,
course.
yeah. I actually purposely, when you're a strength conditioning coach, you can go on a Facebook group and there's about 1,000 books free of charge and someone scanned them. And I thought
Yeah,
that, I always think that's lousy.
absolutely.
You
Yeah.
know, you wouldn't be willing to give someone 20 quid for their life's work, you know.
True.
Not that that's my life's work or any opus or anything like that, but if any coaches are on the call, it is a good starting point to understand strength and conditioning for Gaelic Games, to say the least.
Of course, and that, like, I could never understand it either. And I think like the attitude has to be like, people are you're putting your life experiences and time and efforts into this for people, like, to be expecting it for free. I don't know why that famous quote in my head: if you're good at something, never do it for free. I don't know where that's from, but it's in my head at the minute. It won't come back to me. But yeah, like it's like even with music. Sometimes if you like an artist, I would still buy music. If it's something I'm into, I would always think of supporting an artist, and it's no different in relation to yourself as well. Like when you're putting all this together, you know, you deserve the credit for it.
Yeah, well, if you don't pay, you don't pay attention.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's one of my core beliefs. But yeah, if anyone wants to buy it on the call, it'll help my nappy fund. So, but it is, and from the Longford people on the call, obviously there'll be a lot of Longford people on the call.
Mm.
There's a good few little stories and anecdotes from our journey training e-boys. So,
All legit, I hope.
yeah, all legit, all sanitized. Don't worry. But he won't be in any of them anyway. It'd be more maybe Pfizer or Enda Williams or some of them boys might be in it,
Yeah, yeah, great. And come here, a very proud moment for you, I'm sure.
Yeah, it's nice. It is nice to do. I'm not going to say anything else. It is a nice thing to do, and it's got some nice positive reviews on Amazon and different things. That's nice to see.
Great, because I'm sure it's something you always thought about down the line, something you'd love to have had attached to your name, and something you'd love to have produced.
Yeah. So at the moment, I'm studying my master's. So I always have to have some little thing project in my own life to do.
Fantastic.
So I'm doing a master's at the moment, and I'm halfway through that, and it's yourself. You just have to keep on top of things, or you get stale.
Keep learning, yeah, so important. Stay in the game. Well, full credit to you, Dave. It's brilliant, like. And how is all in life at the moment?
Yeah, it's good.
Still enjoying what you're doing?
Yeah, yeah. There's it's a different role I'm in now completely to even that picture there you have in front of me.
Yeah,
So that was weird actually, coaching Offaly facing you boys.
yeah.
That was a bit of a weird experience.
And enemy lines.
Enemy lines, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
But still, that connection was always there. I always found when we crossed paths or we came across each other, it was just, it was natural. Like,
Yeah, it was weird for ye, and it was weird for the Offaly players. They'd
yeah.
look over at me, and I'd be shaking your hand and hugging you, and they'd be like, "What the hell's he doing?"
Yeah, whose side is he on?
And then some of the younger players in the Longford might have sneered me a little bit, to say the least. I got a few things, and I kind of, I'm sure it fueled you a little bit, and certain circumstances. But it was hilarious. It was like you was all kind of fearful I'd be telling Pat Flanagan all your secrets and everything, but Pat wouldn't ask me one bloody thing about football in a million years. So I was like, even
Yeah,
if I knew all these secrets, it was we actually, he didn't even ask me. That
yeah.
was just the funny thing about it.
It was a new
But yeah, no,
stage.
huh?
It was a new stage. It was a new chapter for yourself as well, and for us
Yeah,
all.
yeah, it
Yeah,
was,
yeah,
yeah. And to be honest with you, I'm sure one day we might do a call like this with the Offaly lads, because it was exactly the same as taking ye over. It was they were
yeah,
bottom of Division 4, and it was about trying to build them back up and get some processes in place,
yeah.
which I'm happy to say have been put in place and are still in place, and then some, which is great to see. But the current role now is more with the underage in the county and trying to put processes in place
Yeah,
for
well,
them, and
they have the right man in place. That's all I can say.
maybe so, maybe. time will tell. But listen, we've a fabulous training centre there, and everyone's trying their best anyway, you know.
Yeah, and look, you're getting the right age group, because that's where you reap the rewards. And if facilities and the setup is in place from at a young age, you know, it's half the battle.
Yeah, it's good. It's trying to build good habits, you know.
Yeah.
And that's all you're trying to do. You don't want them mini Sean McCormack's at 15, you know, benching 50 kilos. But you want them to know what a bench press is when they become old enough to need to know.
Yeah.
And, you know, I'm trying to actually bring to Offaly is more of an attitude thing, that if all they do is accept that they need to do it, that's half the battle.
Yeah. It's funny you say that. I'm just thinking about a time prior to when you came in one night at training in Slashers, like, we were getting a lecture about, lads, if you can't bench 100 kg, you're wasting your time. You shouldn't be here. You know, and how far it came on afterwards, you know. But we took that literally, like, you know, and that's exactly what we set out to do.
But it's funny. I remember people on the call obviously remember Declan Riley as a player. What a player he was.
Oh, wow, yeah.
And I'd say pound for pound, one of the strongest fellas I ever coached. Probably one of the best athletes I ever coached.
It was the closest thing, I'd say, to prison, was being in a tackling square with him.
Yeah, he was. And people in Dublin wouldn't obviously know many Longford footballers, but when I think of really top class footballers, I think of this lad. And I remember the game where I think Ross Munley took him for a wonder score in that game. We beat Laois. And it was a wonder score by Ross Munley. I don't think Ross Munley got a kick after the game. So, but Decky would be able to hang clean. I think he weighed about 70 kilos, and he was only a light fella, as you know, but as strong as an ox.
Yeah.
I used to have to tell him, he'd be like, "Oh, I'm not top of the leaderboard in the hang clean." I says, "You're about 30 kilos lighter than Davy Barden and all these lads. I mean, strength to power ratio is through the roof."
Yeah.
And he'd be like, "Oh no, I want to be the top," you know.
His application was second to none.
Lots of lads like that, you know, and I hope people in Longford realise the work you boys put in around that time was ferocious. You know, mental.
Well, I suppose the reward of all that was the good days, the good times in Croker, and like getting there was fantastic. To win there was even better again, and bringing people, 7,000 strong, however many was there, it was great. The supporters deserve it too.
The regret I had was as well that we didn't get a chance to keep it going, because you mightn't be aware of this. I did a bit of work with that 20s, 21s team, with Eugene McCormack was over them that bet Dublin that time.
Oh yes,
that's Robbie right. Smith and all these lads coming up.
My brother Porrig was on that team. Yeah, he was captain actually.
Yeah, and you had a basis there, the lads who could really kick on, and then people don't realise as well, we had that gym in Gem Park, and my last year we had the 16s in training, we had the minors in training, we had the 20s, 21s as it was then training, and then we had the seniors, and we used to have a setup whereby Paul Barron would ring me and say, "Oh, I can't make 8 o'clock tonight. Can I do 6 o'clock?" And I'd say, "Yeah, you'd be training with the 16s, no problem." And the rise those boys got out of it training with the likes of them was huge.
So where would you get it?
It was light years ahead of his time. And my great regret is that wasn't kept going, and there was many reasons for that. And
of course, yeah.
No one's fault or anything like that. But it's just the nature of the beast, you know.
Yeah, for sure. You're on the spots. What player intrigued you the most from the Longford setup?
Well, Dave Barden would be up there. But I would say a player I've great time for would be, apart from yourself, well, I've great time for, but intrigued would be Frankie McGee, I'd say.
Yeah.
I love that man, you know. And I used to, probably very unprofessional, I think when we were knocked out of the championship once, me and Frankie went for a few pints on our own.
Where did he bring you?
I don't know. I wouldn't be able to find the pub for you now. And he's not a big drinker or anything like that either.
No.
But we just went for a few sociable pints and just to chat to him and his knowledge of football. And I was warned about Frankie a lot coming in, and he's this and he's that, and I just found a very intelligent lad who needed to be handled a little bit different than Sean McCormick needed to be handled. So he intrigued me a lot. Davy Burden obviously was a case study.
He had a great laugh at Davey actually chatting about the.
Well, I could sum up Davy Burden in my third year. He wasn't training with us for a period of time, and he came back for a game against Laois. Hadn't trained, and he had trained on himself, as you know. He's a ferocious trainer.
Was this in Pierce Park as well? This Laois game.
He gave an exhibition in forward like I haven't seen before or since. He was battering the Laois backs.
I said this to him. I picked out that game actually as a highlight. It was unbelievable.
He absolutely bet them up a stick, and I don't know how we didn't win that game, but I think there was a bit of an own goal type situation or some little silly thing or something like that.
Yeah.
And so you couldn't but say he was intriguing,
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Frank and him.
Cool. Good man. Appreciate your honesty. Your second one. In what pub did you have the most crack in Longford?
Milo's, I'd say.
Good times.
Milo's, I'd say. That would be a close run thing. Or Edward J. Valentine's, is that the name?
Yeah, Valentine's.
Actually, it probably would be Edward J. because I actually remember, this is a memory I can't get out of my head. This was just talk about great days. We bet Cavan, and the sun was splitting the stones, and it was early enough for a little bit of a few pints. And of course, Glenn was great at organising all this stuff in terms of making sure the lads were looked after and everything. Yeah. Sure, he was on the phone organising stuff. And I used to always sit up the front with Glenn. And obviously, because I was part of the coaching thing. But we pull into Edward J's, and Edward was dressed like a Roman soldier.
That's right, yeah.
The toe and all the gear. Now, I don't know why he was.
He had the sword and all, hadn't he?
The sword and everything. And just to see Glenn's big smiling face, we just won a big championship match. We're all dolled up. We get off, and we had a great night there. So maybe that one.
We were returning to Caesar.
Yeah, a special mention to Foxes if he's listening in, Jerry.
Oh yeah, Jerry.
I won't give away any state secrets, but there was a secret handshake to get in or a bang on the door at certain times.
A coded knock.
And you need to have a bit of agility to hop a wall as well. But that was a special mention to you, Jerry, if you're listening in.
That's brilliant, Dave. Come here, thanks so much. Really enjoyed that. Really enjoyed it. Really good to get chatting to you again. And I just want to thank you for your contribution to Longford football and to us as people and to our culture in GAA. And I wish you every success going forward, and you and the family and the new arrival. Congratulations again. And stay safe, buddy. And keep doing what you're doing.
And thanks very much for having me on. Hopefully someone got a little bit of something out of that. But I have to say it's great to do something like this, and some great memories, and who knows, maybe our paths will cross again in some capacity in GAA.
With the help of God, David, yeah, for sure. It's always nice to stop and reflect back.
Brilliant, yeah.
And like we always did, have a laugh.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Dave, fair play to you. Thanks so much.
Okay, you're a gent and a scholar.
Take care.
I'll chat to you later.
Thank you. All the best.